Good morning. It's a little different today. Yesterday was another little chaotic day, so I didn't get a chance to record in the office. So today we're going to be This is live. It is 7:01 in my house. Today, like I said, a little different. But I really didn't want to skip today's reading because I think it's one of the more significant readings that we discuss in John's Gospel. So let's read. I want to read John chapter 19, read verses 38 through 42. Later, Joseph of Arimathea asked Pilate for the body of Jesus. Now, Joseph was a disciple of Jesus, but secretly because he feared the Jewish leaders. With Pilate's permission, he came and took the body away. He was accompanied by Nicodemus, the man who had early visited Jesus by night. Nicodemus brought a mixture of myrrh and aloes, about 75 pounds. Taking Jesus' body, the two of them wrapped it with spices and strips of linen. This was in accordance with the Jewish burial customs. At the place where Jesus was crucified, there was a garden, and in the garden was a new tomb, which no one had ever been laid. Because it was a Jewish day of preparation, and since the tomb was nearby, they laid Jesus there. Okay, so we know that Joseph was a follower of Jesus, and we, it was Joseph's tomb and all that. But what I really want to focus on today is Nicodemus. Verse 38. He was accompanied by Nicodemus, the man who had earlier visited Jesus by night. Um, you know, the way, particularly John, but other scripture writers describe certain things in certain places and certain people is always important. There are always significant things that come with the descriptions in scripture. So, of all the ways that Nicodemus could have been described, it is a Nicodemus who was a Pharisee. It is a Nicodemus who was a leader of Israel. It's a Nicodemus who had earlier visited Jesus by night. Um, that's an odd way to introduce somebody. This is Andy, who you once had a cup of coffee with at Starbucks. Not Andy who's a preacher, not Andy who's a husband, not Andy who's a son, but Andy who you had a cup of coffee with. Or, well, I like coffee, so I guess that'd be the reason you could probably fairly describe me in that way. But it didn't introduce Nicodemus with any of these other things that were significant about him or that mattered about him. But it introduced him as the one who came to Jesus by night. Once again, just an interesting way to describe Nicodemus. Why is that? Why did John describe Nicodemus as the one who came to Jesus at night? Well, of course, that is accurate. He did come to Jesus at night. That's exactly when he did come. But there's more to it than that. Remember in John's gospel the importance of the symbolic nature of things. So when someone's sight is healed, for John, that's not just saying that they had literal sight restored. That's part of it, but it's more than that. John is talking about sight in terms of the spiritual reality of what the sight means. So when Jesus restores your sight, he isn't just allowing you to physically see, he's allowing you to spiritually see. It's about your spiritual sight as much as your physical sight. So that's one thing. But in John's gospel, light and darkness are always a huge deal. How often in John's gospel is Jesus referred to as light? How often are the followers of the devil referred to as being in darkness? Light and dark are a huge deal for John. John's always talking about light and dark. Light is living in Jesus. Light is following Jesus. Light is being obedient to God and following God's love and God's will. Light's when you're being obedient. Darkness is when you're being disobedient. Darkness is when you're not following. Darkness is when you are walking away. Darkness is when you are in evil. So light, obedient, following God. Dark, disobedient, following the devil. That's always that dichotomy in John's gospel. Always is. So we see Jesus is dead. They're taking his body down. They're going to bury him now. Joseph was a disciple, but in secret. He's afraid. He comes out of fear. Comes to take the body. He's talking about Nicodemus, who had visited Jesus by night. Nicodemus came to Jesus earlier, not really following, not really obeying, not curious, but he was afraid to come to Jesus in the day, in the light. He came at night. He came in darkness. Nicodemus was not yet following Jesus. He was not yet being obedient. He was not yet being who Jesus knew he could be. He was in the dark. He came at night. He was not obedient. He came at night. Now, what is he doing? After the crucifixion, after the death, he doesn't come at night. He comes in front of God and everybody and says, I will assist and I will help with Jesus' body. He no longer comes at night, but now he comes in day. He no longer comes afraid of what others will think. In fact, it's kind of almost contrasting Joseph. He no longer comes in darkness, but now he comes in light. Now he comes boldly. This shows the growth of Nicodemus. This shows Nicodemus's deepening faith and Nicodemus deepening obedience to Jesus. This shows that Nicodemus was not the finished product whenever he first met Jesus, but that Nicodemus had much more growth to undergo and much more to learn and much more to be obedient to. And this is just a good reminder to me, friends, that God's not done with us. God's not done with you. Your story is not complete. Until you draw your last breath this side of glory, God's got work for you to do. God has growth for you to undergo. We are not yet fully formed. We are not yet fully grown. As long as we're on this side of glory, we have not completely and totally been formed. So don't give up on them. Many of us this morning, we have somebody we're praying for. They're like, Lord, they're just never going to learn. Lord, they're never going to get it right. How many of us today have a loved one, a family member, a child, a parent, a brother, a sister, whoever that we've been praying for years? We're like, Lord, they're just never going to get it. Lord, they're never going to get it. Don't give up on them. They may be in darkness right now, but their story's not over. And they may yet come in light. And likewise for you, don't give up on yourself. So often we doesn't our spiritual growth sometimes feel like two steps forward, one step back, or sometimes it feels like one step forward, two steps back. Don't know if you ever felt that way. I know that I have. And sometimes it's so easy to just think that we're never going to get it right. We're never going to figure it out. We're never going to grow like we ought to. We're never going to move past this sin. We're going to always stay stuck here, and that our story will never change, and that it just is what it is. And that's why I think Nicodemus is such an encouraging character for us to understand in Scripture, because Jesus had much for him to do and much for him to be faithful for, and he had much obedience to give to Jesus. His story started in the dark. His story started in the dark, but his story did not end there. His story did not end in the dark, but his story continued into the light. His story continued into obedience. His story continued into faithfulness. So, friends, your story's not done yet either. God still has something for you as well. God still has growth and work for you in this moment. So, don't give up on others. Don't give up on others. But don't give up on yourself either. Don't give up on yourself either. Your story's not over. We all, as long as we're alive, y'all, God has given us this beautiful day. We have a day ahead of us full of surprises and wonder and beauty and grace. There's so much good that lay ahead of us today. There's so much potential. There's so much hope. There's so much joy that is ahead of us. So don't don't give up on that. So, I just think Nicodemus is a great story. I love his story. I love his growth, and I love what Jesus does with him. So he started off in the darkness, but he finally ended up in the light. And so may that be our story, friends. May we always be walking towards the light. So, thanks for being with us in this live video. This is like no safety net today. So if something went wrong, it went wrong. So thanks for being with us. We'll see you tomorrow morning. Have a great day.